nanohub.org.
Online simulation, and more for nanotechnology.
All right, welcome everybody. We're going to start our seminar series for today. Today we have an awesome presentation by Peter Kazarinoff, who is from Portland Community College. And he's going to be talking about podcasts and a micro nanotechnology education journal that we are going to be trying to roll out in the spring or summer, hopefully. So Peter, looking forward to the talk, and thanks for sharing today. So go ahead.
Thanks, Jared. Good morning, everyone on the West Coast, and I guess good afternoon, everyone on the East Coast. I'm Peter Kazarinoff, faculty at Portland Community College in beautiful Portland, Oregon. My email is peter.kazarinoff@pcc.edu. That's Portland Community College, not Jared's PCC, which is Pasadena City College. I've also included my email in the chat, and I've also put a copy of the slides in the chat if anybody would like those. So today I'm going to talk about dissemination for the Micro Nanotechnology Education Center that I sometimes call MNT-EC for short. So this MNT-EC presentation is on how MNT-EC is starting a journal and how MNT-EC is releasing a podcast. So before we get started, I'd just like everybody, if they could, to put where you are in the chat. Tell me what your state and city is, if you're in the US, or maybe like your country city or country province city, if you're outside of the US. So I'm going to put mine in the chat too. And when we got a couple in there, I just want to see how far across the country and maybe across the globe we have on the seminar today. So we've got Arizona, Texas, Indiana, someone in Puerto Rico, Virginia, Seattle, just north of me, Arkansas, Iowa, Phoenix, California, upstate New York, Arizona, Texas, a couple from Portland. Hello, other Portland people. We've got Los Angeles, Atlanta, New Jersey, Monrovia, Morocco. Hello, Morocco. That's awesome. And a couple more from California, Kansas, and New Jersey. So I know this is a tough time for everyone given our global pandemic, but one of the cool things that we're now able to do is meet like this and have people across the country and people across the globe all together on these seminars. So thanks everyone for being here. So I've got 3 takeaways from today's presentation. What I want you to take away from the presentation today is that MNT-EC has a journal, a peer-reviewed journal that we're creating. The second takeaway is that MNT-EC has a podcast. MNT-EC is creating and releasing a podcast. And the third takeaway is that you can contribute to both of these. You can contribute to the journal and you can contribute to the podcast, and we need your contributions and we need your help. So I'm going to start off talking about the first takeaway, the Journal of Micro Nanotechnician Education that MNT-EC is creating. And in this part of the presentation, Netta is going to help me out a little bit. Netta, is your audio working okay? Could you just wave, tell me hi?
Hi, Peter.
Hey, awesome, awesome. So here's something for everyone to think about. Number 1, have you read a scientific or professional journal since college or graduate school? So I'm just going to pause for a sec. Have you read a scientific or professional journal since college or graduate school? Okay, so number 2, have you written a scientific or professional journal article since college or graduate school? So think about, have you written a scientific or professional journal article since graduate school? And then the last question, why or why not? Why have you been able to read journal articles, or why not? Why have you been able to write journal articles, or why not? So I'm gonna stop the share and just look through the chat here. We've got a couple of yes to both. So yes, reader, yes, writer. We've got a yes and a no. So a reader, but not a writer. Somebody who read in Q1 and has written. Somebody who said, yes, they did read, but no, they haven't. Yes, they've read, but no, they haven't published. And a bunch of people have yes to both questions. So kind of from the chat, it seems like we've got a big group of people who've both read and published. And then we've got a bunch of people who've read and then who haven't published. And then some people who've read, but not necessarily recently, and haven't published. So that's really interesting to think about. Why haven't a bunch of us been able to publish since graduate school? So what are some reasons that you'd publish in a peer-reviewed journal? So one of the main ones is you want to share your work with others, and you want to further the field that you're publishing in. And our field, technician education, you want to make that field better. Another good reason is to collaborate with a colleague. Most peer-reviewed journal articles aren't written just by a single author. They've got multiple authors. This is a good way to collaborate with someone else. Another reason is professional advancement. If you're up for a full-time appointment or tenure review, having a bunch of publications under your belt is usually a good thing. And another thing is grant proposals. Having a bunch of peer-reviewed publications is something you can highlight on your bio sketch and show why you're qualified when you submit a grant proposal. But a bunch of these things, although they're advantageous for you two-year technician educators at community colleges, there are a bunch of barriers for them to be able to publish. And because of that, the MNT-EC is going to be creating a peer-reviewed journal whose target audience is two-year technician educators, and whose target authors are two-year technician educators. So next, Netta's going to talk about the process of writing, submitting, and publishing a journal article because the process is a little more complicated than you might imagine. So Netta, take it away. How does somebody submit, review, and then an article get published?
Thank you, Peter. So Peter and I started working on this journal. We have a team of professionals that are helping us from the center. First of all, I think the idea of having this micro nano journal is very unique in terms of we have a lot of journals that are focused on research in micro and nano, but none of them are focused on educational aspects of nanotechnology. So by having this journal, we're giving a platform, first of all, to authors and submitters. If they have a work like a new demonstration tool, if they have used a research technique, they can share their articles and actually publish them. And next, for the readers, it could be like a high school instructor or college faculty. They will have access to these articles, hopefully without paying a fee. So the review process for this journal is going to be similar to a peer-reviewed journal. the articles that we receive are going to be reviewed first by the editor-in-chief, then they will be reviewed by associate editors, and they will be sent out for reviewers. Once this process is completed, and if the article is accepted, it could get published after proofreading and formatting and everything. So in this way, we're trying to increase the quality of articles that we're going to publish. So at this moment, we're trying to decide which route we're going to take. One route could be home hosting the journal, using a platform, calling for abstracts, and using our own policies for the article fee and registration. And one route could be going with a publisher and actually following the rules and policies of the publisher in terms of article fee and publication fees. So hopefully, if everything goes well, we can have the first call to abstracts next summer. And if you're interested to contribute, just let Peter know. We would be happy to have you in the team and use your experience, especially if you have like published or write an article. If you have been an editor in a journal, we can definitely use your experience in starting and developing this journal. So thank you, Peter.
Thanks, Netta. So like Netta said at the end, we're looking for collaborators in the form of article writers, in the form of article reviewers, and in the form of article readers once we publish the journal. So we welcome your collaboration on this project. So the poll question is, do you have access to peer-reviewed journals at your institution? So we're going to continue on in the seminar. Next, I want to talk about our second takeaway, the Talking Technicians podcast, the podcast that MNT-EC is producing and releasing. And help me with this is Janet. Janet, are you there? Is your mic working? Can you say hi real quick?
Hello, good morning.
Hi, good morning. Thanks for the help today. So what is a podcast? If you don't listen to podcasts, a podcast is an internet radio show that you can listen to on your phone or on your computer on demand. And there have been a couple of very popular podcasts, such as the Serial podcast. The New York Times has a popular one called The Daily, and you can listen to many news shows like NPR's Up First over your phone listening to podcasts. So why does MNT-EC want to start a podcast? So we feel that the voices of all types of technicians are valuable to be heard, and in particular, the voices of underrepresented groups in technician education are valued to be heard. So we wanted to start a podcast in order to celebrate and disseminate these voices, to share with the community what are technicians' lives like and what do technicians do day to day. So each episode of our podcast is going to be an interview with a working technician. And we're going to be focusing on technicians who come from many different demographic groups. So for each technician, we want to know, who are you? And we want to know, where'd you come from? Also, what's your education background? What kind of two-year program did you come from? And then what do you do? What's your work like day to day? And we hope to be able to share these stories with the technician education community so that you know what your graduates go on to do, and hope to share these with any future or current technician students to know what your life might be like. So we think that this could be unique in the podcasting space and provide a view into the lives of working technicians. So next, Janet's going to help me and talk about our process for making a podcast. Janet, how do we go from contacting a guest to people listening in their earbuds?
Good morning, everybody. Yes, of course. Once an interviewee is confirmed, we contact them with a pre-interview email to help familiarize them with the questions that we would like to address. We also confirm that the guest will have a chance prior to the podcast going live to review and make edits as necessary. We then calendar the dates for the rehearsal and the actual recording. During the rehearsal, not only do we review the questions for content, we confirm with our guests that they have the necessary equipment. Our goal is to produce a quality session with great audio. If adjustments are recommended during the rehearsal, we work with our guests to see that they have the equipment needed. If we need to loan out a mic or a headset, no problem. We are happy to ship one to them. We follow up prior to the actual recording with a tech check to ensure that all issues have been resolved. Now, since Peter handles the recording and the editing on his side, I'm going to ask him to have a few words on this point.
So thanks, Janet. So in terms of recording, I use some equipment that not everyone has in order to get really high quality audio. So one is a broadcast quality microphone. This is a dynamic microphone, and it's on a shock mount. That microphone is connected to an audio interface, and this USB audio interface allows you to connect broadcast quality microphones. And while I'm doing the recording, I'm listening through a set of broadcast quality headphones, and recording high quality audio is really important when you are making a podcast. Once the recording is completed, then I edit the podcast. So this is an example of Adobe Audition, the software package that I edit the podcast in. And I'll have a track for my voice and a track for the technician's voice. And in here, I'll add in things like the intro music, the intro, and the outro. So Janet, once the podcast is made, that piece of audio, what happens next?
Okay, once the podcast is ready to be posted, we will post it on the Mentec website, Nano Hub, and the ATE Central website. We will also be using the podcast platforms of iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and Stitcher. So I think you now have an excerpt from our first podcast to share with the folks.
Yeah, so I've got an excerpt to show, and hopefully this will come through your headphones right now. This is an excerpt from our very first episode. So tell me a little bit more about the National Ignition Facility. That sounds incredibly dangerous. What is it?
So the goal of the National Ignition Facility is to create fusion energy, which is what the sun runs off of. So we're trying to create a mini sun in our target chamber. And how we do this is we point 192 beams onto a small hull rum, which is a target that's roughly the size of a pencil eraser. And
so that's an excerpt of our very first episode. And if you want to hear more about the National Ignition Facility and the technicians that work there, we're going to release our first episode by October 13th on the major
31.
podcast hosting, or October 31. Thank you, Jenna. October 31 on the major podcast hosting platforms. So now we're going to switch gears and talk about the third takeaway for today's seminar. And thanks so much for the help, Janet. I really appreciate it. You can contribute to both of these efforts. So I want to talk about the resources that MNT-EC has, and then the collaboration opportunities that you can join in on. And help me with this section is going to be Greg. Greg, is your microphone working? Can you say hi real quick?
Hello, Peter and
Hi,
everyone.
thanks for the help.
You bet.
So some resources that MnTech can help you with. We can assist you with grant submission and help act as mentors for your grant. Also, we've got a bunch of professional development opportunities coming up this summer. We can also help you with conference abstract submissions, as well as construction of your presentations, or if you need help registering for conferences, we could support you with that. We can also assist you with journal paper construction, and we invite you to submit to our upcoming journal. In addition, MnTech can connect you with other educators or other resources that we have connections to. So some collaboration opportunities with MnTech. In our first takeaway, we talked about MnTech's journal. So once we get it up and running, you could submit a journal article. You could review a journal article, and I guess I'm highlighting that twice. You could really review a journal article. We could use help with that. You could connect us with a podcast guest. Do you know a technician that has an awesome story to share? And you could listen and share the podcast we create. So Greg helped me find the first podcast guest. Greg, can you talk about a little bit about Kristen and what it was like for you to find a podcast guest?
Sure, Peter. Be glad to. Yeah, Kirsten was a small town Iowa girl and came through the Indian Hills Community College Laser and Optics Technology program. And when Peter asked if any of us had any ideas on someone that would be a good technician to participate in the podcast, I thought of Kirsten. Kirsten had connected, we'd connected through LinkedIn when she graduated, right before she graduated a few years ago. And, we've stayed in contact over LinkedIn. And so I just reached out to her and told her a little bit about the podcast project and asked her if she might be interested in participating in it. And she said, yeah, she'd be happy to. So then I sent her an email with a little more information that Peter provided. Peter will give you a nice a paragraph of information about how this is going to work. And so I provided that to her along with an electronic introduction, which is what we do a lot of nowadays. I introduced her to Peter through electronically. And then I turned it over to her and Peter to continue on with the project. And they did that. And I know Peter followed up with her, and I also thanked her. And so it was really, for me, it was really an easy process, a couple of contacts and just an email with information, and then, some follow-up afterwards. So it was very easy, and I was happy to do it, and she was happy to do it. And I've told Peter I have some more students in mind, but I'd like to encourage the rest of you to let your students tell their story. This is a great opportunity for them to do that. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Greg.
Yeah.
And I put my email there in the chat. If you know any students with great stories, and talking to Kirsten was just amazing. Like hearing her story, what it was like for her as a woman being in a technician education program, and what it was like at her job was really just amazing to hear. So if you've got some stories that have some students who have stories that you think would be great to share with others, please get in contact with me. And like Greg said, it's not a whole lot of work, a couple contacts and a couple emails, and I can send you a little paragraph as long as you could give me a digital introduction. So this concludes my presentation today. I just want to remind you about the 3 takeaways. So first takeaway is that MNT-EC is starting a journal. We want you to write articles, we want you to become a reviewer, and we want you to read and share. The second takeaway, MNT-EC is creating a podcast. We want your help. Do you have a student with a story that could share that story with us? And listen and share the podcast. And then the third takeaway, MNT-EC's got a bunch of resources like professional development opportunities, and we can connect you with others. And we've got some collaboration opportunities with our journal and our podcast.